Hello, and thank you for joining us on episode 29 of You're Welcome, the podcast where two guys who don't know squat become experts on everything. I'm Drew.
And I'm Zach.
And welcome to the show. This week we'll be teaching you about...
glass blowing.
Glass blowing. And I'll be teaching you about Cherokee Stickball, baby. Oh,
Ooh.
yes.
Hey.
That's right.
Hey. Tell me a little bit about, just give me an idea of how your week has been.
Oh, okay. I thought you're like, give me like a little, like a teaser on this.
Give me a teaser on this stickball. Nah,
well, here's a small teaser.
Okay.
There are sticks involved.
Oh, are there balls?
Yep. No. There's only one.
Oh.
But we'll get to that later.
Okay.
Zach, why don't you start off? Why don't you start off with how your week was?
Well, it was pretty good, I would say. The weekend was considerably better than the week, I would say.
Right.
I went to a bachelor party for a good buddy. Garrett, if you're listening, beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful place.
Beautiful man.
We had a good time.
My week, thanks for asking, Zach.
Oh, yeah. How was your week, bud?
My week was great. Celebrated a year of marriage with my lovely bride.
Woo!
Happy
anniversary!
We went to a lovely little casino and didn't gamble anything whatsoever. We just enjoyed the amenities. Fancy restaurant, free booze on the casino floor. Didn't pay for any of that. Suckers. Yeah, it's a great time.
Sounds like a beautiful time.
And then at work, we started 3 more temps this week, which I don't know. I mean, this is my first holiday season with this job, but like as of right now, we've got 6 temps. That's like 6 people helping, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people who are actually going to be running routes. So we don't even have enough vehicle room for 6 extra people.
That sounds like a work problem.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's for them to figure
I'll
out.
let them figure that out.
Yeah.
But the guy that I worked with today was a legitimate, like, he was not messing with me. He had legitimate arguments to, like, back up, like, my debates with him. But he was a legitimate flat earther.
No way.
Yeah.
I didn't think they existed.
Everything I was bringing up, I was like, where's the edge of the earth? How does the sun rotate? Like,
yeah.
like the sun rises in the east and falls in the west, like all these like really common sense stuff. And he was like, "Oh yeah, see, this is the way I explained that, or this, that, and the other." And like walking on the moon was a hoax and all this other crap. I was like, "Okay, man,
dude, we got to get him on the podcast."
I would be down. Honestly, that could work.
Yes, an expert on flat earther. Flat earthing.
I'll see what he says to that. Absolutely. But anyway, we got some stuff to cover this week.
Oh yeah.
And I wish for my anniversary, I wish I had been able to give Diamond, like a paperweight or like maybe a vase to put some flowers in or just something. But regardless of whatever it is, I just wish I'd been able to give her something made of glass.
Oh,
you know of anyone who might be able to help me out with that for maybe next year?
Well, I don't know. There's probably some local places around where you live at that might have some shops, some glass blowing shops.
Ooh.
But I'm gonna tell you a little bit about it. Give you a little bit of a rundown. So you want to learn about glass blowing. I suppose I can tell you about it, but first, a caveat. I am not in any way a professional glassblower, and you can read about all the potential hazards and horror stories of folks glassblowing, so trust me when I say that you probably want to take some classes before attempting anything like this. So with that in mind, I want you to close your eyes a moment. If you're driving, obviously don't do that. But imagine a window, tall and perhaps segmented for structural purposes or what have you. Now, imagine a child with his face pressed against the glass, slobbering and making spit bubbles on the surface. That, my friends, is glass blowing in its simplest form.
Good.
That didn't land. Oof. On a serious note, feels bad. So before we get into it, I'm actually going to break down some of the tools of the glass blowing trade. Typically, much like the metalworking or forging, you'll want a furnace. It's a source of heat used to melt and heat glass to workable temperatures. Most modern glass furnaces are usually gas-powered and heat to around 2,000 to 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit. For those not Fahrenheit followers, I don't remember the exact Celsius for that.
The
anyway,
followers of the Fahrenheit?
Non-followers of the Fahrenheit.
Praise the sun.
Praise the sun. The next up is an annealer. Annealer, in case you didn't understand me. It's an oven used for annealing, which is the process of slowly cooling and hardening glass after it has been worked by an artist. Glass will crack if it cools too quickly, so an annealer is used to prevent this. Typically, you'll have a bench, which is essentially the workstation that a glassblower works on, usually with arms that support the blowpipe that the artist rolls with it. Anyway, a block is usually a wooden spoon-shaped tool used to shape hot glass. A blowpipe is a hollow metal pipe, typically nowadays metal, with a mouthpiece on one end and a built-up area on the other end where the molten glass sits. It is typically used to blow air into the molten glass. Next is the glory hole. The glory hole is the opening of the furnace used to keep the glass hot, so it is soft and workable during the glass-making process. You'll also use jacks, which are they look like a large pair of tweezers, typically used to manipulate hot glass. They come in different sizes for different types of glass working. You may also find a marver, which is nowadays a metal table used for adding color and shaping hot glass in a blowpipe. In the past, marvers were typically made of marble slabs, which is where the name comes from. And you can also use molds, which is an object used for shaping molten glass to its form. An optic mold, which is a metal mold with notches of various sizes used for separating color in the glass into lines or pressing ridged patterns into the glass. Paddles. Wooden tools used to flatten sections of the glass, such as the bottom of a piece where the glass art will stand. A punty. This is another big one. It's a metal rod which is tipped with a small gather of hot glass, which is just
I really
a
think
bit.
You're just making these words up. I don't. A punty.
Trust me, this will help out in the videos you watch, because it's a whole lot cooler to actually watch the videos of people glass blowing than it is to hear me talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see, the punty. Whenever a glass piece has been blown to its, whatever its size, the work on the bottom of the piece is finished, the punty is attached to the bottom and to hold it while the artist is finished working on the top. Next is a yoke. It's a stand that supports a blowpipe while the glass is attached to the blowpipe and is being reheated in the glory hole. So this is what you'll learn about in your glass blowing classes, and it's what you typically find in a modern shop.
So we've been talking mostly about modern stuff, but what about when glass blowing first started? Like how is it invented? Like all the, like historically, where did we start with this?
Well, a lot of the tools are relatively about the same through the years, but let me give you a little history on the art. So some sources claim that the earliest evidence of the glass blowing comes from a collection of waste from a glass shop, including fragments of glass tubes, glass rods, tiny blown glass bottles, which was dumped in a mikveh, which is a ritual bath in a Jewish quarter of an old city of Jerusalem, which is dated back from 37 to 4 BC. So some of the glass tubes recovered are fire closed at one end and are partially inflated by blowing through the open end while still hot to form a small bottle. And thus, they're considered a rudimentary form of a blowpipe. So, tube blowing at that time not only represents the initial attempts of experimentation by glass workers at blowing glass, but it is also a revolutionary step that introduced a change in conception and a deep understanding of glass. These inventions swiftly eclipsed all other traditional methods, such as casting and core forming in working glass. The invention of glass blowing coincided with the establishment of the Roman Empire in the 1st century BC, which enhanced the spread of dominance with this new technology. Glass blowing was greatly supported by the Roman government, although citizens could not be in trade, in particular under the reign of Augustus, and glass was being blown in many areas of the Roman world. On the eastern borders of the empire, the first large glass workshops were set up by the Phoenicians, supposedly, in the birthplace of glassblowing in the contemporary Lebanon and Israel, as well as in the neighboring provinces of Cyprus. There is evidence of people using annealing, making glass and coating the stones with it. You'll see a lot of beautiful stonework and glasswork with these colored tiles that still look relatively untouched today with that process. So, who really was the first person to use glass in this way? Well, the answer is not as important as the varied uses that man has divided to utilize it.
Okay, so we've talked tools.
Yep.
And we've talked history.
Yep.
But what is glass blowing? I feel like we're talking about glass blowing, but I don't know. Maybe there's an alien out there who's listening who doesn't know what the action of glass blowing is.
Yeah. So you take glass and you, and there you go. That's glass blowing.
just glass like comes out of your mouth. You make glass.
Yeah, basically, you spit glass out of your glass gland through a tube, and it blows up like a bubble.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Your glass gland.
Yeah. Your gland. Anyway, we'll break it down by the types that you'll likely read or hear about in your classes or whatever. Free blowing is a method of glass blowing. So this method has the preeminent position in glass forming ever since its introduction in the middle of the 1st century BC until the late 19th century, and is still widely used as glass forming technique, especially for artistic purposes. The process of free blowing involves the blowing of short puffs of air into a molten portion of glass, called a gather, which has been spooled at one end of the blowpipe. So, your glass is in the furnace. You have a big pool of glass. You take your blowpipe and you kind of like gather it up at the end of the blowpipe.
Like you twist the pipe?
I suppose you can, yeah. You stick it in there, and then you maybe pull out, let it cool a little bit, then stick more and layer it.
Okay.
So you gather the glass on the end.
So like the cooler glass is going to. So like you have the first stick.
Yeah.
You just put the bare metal stick in there and get some, and then let that glass cool off a little bit.
Yeah.
And then that cooler glass is going to collect more hot glass.
Yeah. And
gotcha. Okay.
I've seen some folks do it to where they do different colored glass in that way. They get like the basic glass.
So there's multiple layers. Yeah.
Which is really cool to see in person.
Mm-hmm.
So you have your gather at the end of the blowpipe, and you start blowing into the end of the pipe. So this will expand it. It has the effect of forming like an elastic skin on the interior of the glass blob that matches the exterior skin caused by the removal of heat from the furnace. And the glass worker can then quickly inflate the molten glass to a coherent blob and work it into a desired shape. Using any of your tools that you have, like the paddle or the block. Typically, if you want to make a round shape, it's like a little wooden spoon, and you can work that glass into it as it cools. Let's see. Researchers at the Toledo Museum of Art attempted to reconstruct the ancient free-blowing technique by using clay blowpipes. The results proved that short clay blowpipes of about 30 to 60 centimeters, or 12 to 24 inches, can facilitate free blowing because they are simple to handle and to manipulate and can be reused several times. Skilled workers are capable of shaping almost any vessel forms by rotating the pipe, swinging it, and controlling the temperature of the piece while they blow. They can produce a great variety of glass objects, ranging from drinking cups to window glass, which is pretty insane to watch. An outstanding example of the free-blowing technique is the Portland vase, which is a cameo manufactured during the Roman period. An experiment was carried out by Gudenrath and Whitehouse with the aim of recreating the Portland vase. A full amount of blue glass required for the body of the vase was gathered on the end of the blowpipe and was subsequently dipped into a pot of hot white glass. Inflation occurred when the glass blower blew the molten glass into a sphere, which was then stretched or elongated into the vase with a layer of white glass overlaying the blue body, which is pretty freaking neat. Again, talking about it is a little less interesting. The next method we'll talk about is mold blowing. So mold blowing was an alternative glass blowing method that came after the invention of free blowing, I think around during the second quarter of the first century AD. Excuse me. So what they do here is a glob of molten glass is placed on the end of a blowpipe, much like traditional, and then is then inflated into a wooden or metal carved mold. So in that way, the shape and texture of the bubble of glass is determined by the design on the interior of the mold rather than the skill of the glassworker. So think of it in a sense like free blowing is someone drawing out and hammering a sword, right? Whereas mold blowing is more akin to making a cast iron skillet, if that makes any sense. So there are typically two types of molds, namely single-piece molds and multi-piece molds, which are frequently used to produce mold-blown vessels. The former allows the finished glass object to be removed in one movement by pulling it upwards from the single-piece mold, and it is largely employed to produce tableware in vessels for storage and transportation, whereas the latter is made of multi-paneled mold segments that join together and permit the development of more sophisticated surface modeling, texture, design. Let's see, the Roman leaf baker, which is on display at the J. Paul Getty Museum, was blown in a 3-part mold decorated with foliage relief of 4 vertical plants. Meanwhile, Taylor and Hill tried to reproduce mold-blown vessels by using 3-part molds made of different materials. The results suggested that the metal molds, in particular bronze, are more effective in producing high-relief design on glass than plaster or wooden molds. So, the development of mold-blowing technique has enabled a speedy production of glass objects in large quantity, thus encouraging the mass production and widespread distribution of glass objects. Think like light bulbs was made in a similar fashion. Now we're going to cover a little bit of modern glass blowing. So this will take into account the actual process of melting down raw materials. So the transformation of these raw materials into glass takes place at around 1320 degrees Celsius or 2400 degrees Fahrenheit. The glass emits enough heat to appear almost white hot. Then the glass is left to fine out, which is allowing the bubbles to rise out of the mass, and then the working temperature is reduced in the furnace to about 1090 degrees Celsius or 2000 degrees Fahrenheit. At this stage, the glass appears to be a bright orange color. Although most glass blowing is done between 870 and 1040 degrees Celsius, soda lime glass remains somewhat plastic and workable at a temperature as low as 730 degrees Celsius or 1350 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, annealing is usually done between 371 and 482 degrees Celsius or 700 and 900 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a lot of numbers. Anyway. So, modern glass blowing typically involves 3 furnaces. The first, which contains a crucible of molten glass, is simply referred to as the furnace. The second is called the glory hole. It is used to reheat a piece in between steps of working with it. The final furnace is called the layer, or the annealer, and is used to slowly cool the glass over a period of a few hours to a few days, depending on the size of the pieces. This keeps the glass from cracking or shattering due to thermal stress. Now, historically, all 3 furnaces were contained in one structure, with a set of progressively cooler chambers for each of the 3 purposes. But modern technology makes it a little easier to control those temperatures with what's the word, propane. So you can have 3 separate furnaces for it. So yeah, the other major tools, which I kind of mentioned, I already mentioned that. The tip of the blowpipe is first preheated, then dipped into the molten glass in the furnace. The molten glass is gathered onto the end of the blowpipe, much in the way that viscous honey is picked up on a honey dipper. Then, this glass is typically rolled on the marver, which, again, is like marble, but is usually steel. The process called marvering forms a cool skin on the exterior and then allows it to shape. Then, air is blown into the pipe, creating a bubble. Then, the glass worker can gather more glass over that bubble to create a larger piece. Now, once a piece has been blown to its approximate final size, the bottom is finalized. Then the molten glass is attached to a stainless steel rod or an iron rod called a punty for shaping and transferring the hollow piece from the blowpipe to provide an opening and finalize the top. So, the bench is a glass blower's workstation, as I mentioned, and has place for the glass worker to sit, place for the tools, the 2 rails that the pipe or punty rides on while the blower works with the piece. In similar fashion, pads of water-soaked newspaper, typically about a 16 centimeter or 6-inch square, up to an inch thick, held in the bare hand, can also be used to shape the piece. Jacks are also used to shape the piece to whatever shape you desire. Again, you can also use small tweezers, regular tweezers, or the larger tweezers that I mentioned to pick out little details or pull in the glass. Typically, what you'll see in modern glass blowing is art pieces. And I would highly recommend watching a couple YouTube videos of people doing some modern glass blowing because honestly, it is absolutely mesmerizing to watch somebody make intricate sculptures out of molten glass. I would recommend watching this video it's titled Jason Christian Red Dragon. The voiceover isn't the best, honestly, but essentially the video showcases the making of a beautifully intricate glass sculpture of a dragon, and they kind of show all the different steps of making this glass sculpture. So go do that. That's sort of a roundabout way to end off the glass blowing.
Watch a video.
Watch a video. It's a whole lot better than me talking about it. It'll make so much more sense when you're watching it and like seeing somebody actually do it. So yeah.
But overlay Zach's audio while you're watching.
So yeah, that was glass blowing. Sort of.
Well, I'm gonna go heat up my oven real quick.
No.
I'm gonna give it a good old fashioned home try.
Can your oven?
I'm gonna try it at home.
Can your oven get to 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit? If so, I'm impressed.
That's on the lax day.
Oh,
yeah, those are low number. Those are rookie numbers.
Oh man, I bet you cook turkeys in like 2 minutes.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah. So now that I'm thinking about it, we've made our glass sculpture. It's beautiful. It's sitting on our desk. We're never gonna make anything out of glass again. We want to do something fun. We want to play with a stick, maybe a ball. And I don't know what that is. I don't know what that game is.
This is the best segue I've ever heard in my entire life.
I try not to make it awkward. Still awkward. So, I mean, Drew, you read about it. You did your research. You know what stickball is. Tell us what it is. Why was it even invented? Right.
Okay. So I'll just start right off with the history, and then we'll get into the actual game.
Do it.
So we're talking about the times of the Native Americans before the white man came over and spoiled everything as far as Native American culture goes.
Yep. Okay.
I mean, we're talking about times where, like, if you know anything about Native American history, you know that there are very specific parts of the country where there were a vast majority of Native American population.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, they decided on where they lived based on, the resources around them. So there were a lot of coastal tribes.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of tribes in Oklahoma and North Carolina in particular So the tribe that I'm going to be speaking about more regularly during this episode is the Cherokee tribe, which again had I guess you'd call it a sect, a tribe. They had a tribe in North Carolina, and then they also had a tribe in Oklahoma. I don't know if that's, like they had a tribe in North Carolina in the old days, and then they moved a tribe over to Oklahoma. I don't know the details about that, but I know nowadays that there's a tribe in both places.
Oh, cool.
But as far as the history of stickball goes, so all these tribes, right? They're, let's say, hypothetically, there's more than one tribe surrounding, like this pond area and like this really good hunting spot. But there's only enough, general area for one of the tribes to fish and hunt in that spot. Well, then you start to have contention between the two tribes. We want to feed our children, but you want to feed your children. So we have to have a way to hash this out. And you can't just they were smart about it. You can't just go over, like, you can't go to war over every little thing.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So they had to have a way of hashing situations out. They had to have a way of hashing conflict out without full on killing each other. And that resulted in the invention of stickball. It was invented to take the place of warfare.
So would you say this is the predecessor to baseball?
No.
Okay.
Not at all. I would not say that they're similar. But the sport that I would compare it to would be lacrosse. If you've seen the sticks that they use, or if you've seen any gameplay of Cherokee Stickball, it's obvious. It's very similar to lacrosse.
Huh. Okay.
Now, like I said, it was a replacement for warfare. However, it would be a lie if I were to say that stickball completely diminished the death toll over disputes like this. If two tribes were playing stickball with one another to handle a dispute, there would still be people who would die. Okay.
Oh.
I mean, these are like hard wood sticks. Like, these are hickory sticks.
Oh.
And there's not very many rules. So, like, there's not any, like, hey, that's a foul, you hit me with your stick.
Right.
No.
Oh, no.
Yeah, no, it's basically just get the ball in the opponent's net, however you need to.
Huh.
But obviously it would mean far fewer would die over hitting each other with what are essentially lacrosse sticks, as opposed to hitting each other with spears and arrows. Okay.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So you mentioned they're typically the sticks. They're made of hickory, right? I mean, other than that, do they have any, like, other specifications? Like, they're kind of like lacrosse sticks. Do they have nets in them?
Right. So nowadays, so like I'll take, like I said, there's North Carolina and then there's Oklahoma. So I'll say, let's talk about North Carolina. The sticks in North Carolina are all fairly similar to one another nowadays, like during modern day,
right?
Specifically, as there are only a few people who actually make them or know how to make them. So if you want a genuine Cherokee stickball stick, you need to go to like one of these, like powwow, like events, like Native American days, where they have these, get-togethers, and you had to buy them if you want it to be, like, oh man, this is a genuine Cherokee stickball stick. So nowadays, there's more of a standard to the size, the weight, how big the cup is on the end, and all that stuff. However, traditionally, a player would normally go out, find their own stick, and bend it into the shape for what they needed it for. So a good comparison for both the sport and for the stick itself, again, would be lacrosse. So the traditional players could bend their stick in whatever fashion so that the cup and the net on the end may be of varying sizes, depending on if you are physically faster than most players, then you might have a smaller cup so that you can kind of like catapulted across the field faster. You can pass it to somebody with a smaller cup.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you're playing the backfield, if you're defending, traditionally you are allowed to craft your stick so that the net on the end is a little bit larger, so that you have a better chance of blocking shots. So again, that's just another way of how traditionally there are a lot more. There's like practically no rules, whereas modern day there's a few more rules to make things safer and a little bit more like it makes sense. It's fair. There's a standard size to the cup.
Right.
But that's not what it's about. It wasn't a game to them back in the day,
Yeah.
as what we think of now.
It was life and death.
It was, is my family going to get fed?
Yeah. Huh. That's crazy.
But yeah. But like I said, most sticks nowadays have a standard size and weight. Now, as far as the ball goes, that has not changed at all from the old days to today.
Really?
The ball you play with is handmade, of course.
Mm-hmm.
The center would either be, like the very center of the ball would either be a rock or a hickory nut.
Mm-hmm.
And then that would be wrapped in deer fur. And then that concoction would then be wrapped with deer skin and stitched together much like a baseball. But the general size would be slightly smaller than a baseball.
Okay, that's interesting. So you said traditionally there weren't really any rules. I
Exactly.
imagine modern times they would have some semblance of rules, but we haven't really talked about it yet. So what's the situation there? Do they have rules now, or?
Yes. So there are rules, like I said, to make things a little bit more safer nowadays.
Yeah.
But it's a very large gray area. Again, being that there's an Oklahoma version, there's a North Carolina version, and even in Oklahoma, there are versions of versions. Okay, so it kind of starts to get into homebrew rules. Like, okay, you're playing on my field. These are those kind of variant rules that we play with here, right?
Street stickball.
So exactly, but that's universal. It's all street stickball. So are there standard rules? Heck no. Is there more than one version of stickball? Absolutely. I mean, think about it. Is there a National Stickball Association? No. So then there aren't really going to be any sort of standards to, on how to play the game. There are literally almost no stipulations. The most common version of the game is played with 2 goals. So one on either field, on either side into the field, and then the object, of course, being to put the ball through the opponent's goal. But past that, rules start to vary greatly. For instance, the size of the field could be anywhere from the size of a football field to miles of a plane. Okay, it could be miles long. There's no standard.
Huh.
So when you're talking about field size, you should also take into consideration how many people are playing, which can also greatly vary. Back in the old days, it was one tribe against another. So the tribes might decide to just put their strongest men on the field, or they might decide to put an entire tribe against the other. So it could literally be either 10 or 15 on each side, or it could be a battlefield situation to where there's 1,000 on each side.
Wow.
Okay, so now let's bring it back to modern day. That we're probably not going to have a game where there's 1,000 people on each side, right?
Yeah.
But that gives you an idea. The rules are loose. Okay, there's not a standard. So long as you have an equal amount of players on either team, then you're good. So then just get a field of an appropriate size for the amount of people that are playing, and that's your standard.
Huh.
Yeah. So ball movement. Here's another kind of gray area. There are some versions of the game where the ball may only be handled, like you're only allowed to use your sticks. And there are some people who prefer one stick, but most of the time you're going to be carrying 2 sticks that are pretty identical. The idea is that you kind of make like a scissor shape with them so that you can cup the ball in between the 2 cups.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah.
Like a clamp.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there are some versions where you are allowed to touch the ball with your hand. I've seen players use a stick in a hand and they'll cup the hand over the cup on the end of the stick, or or they just kind of ditch the stick at some points in the game where maybe they're about to score and they'd rather try and throw the ball, or if they're trying to pass like a super long pass and they'll slingshot with the stick. But this majorly depends on if you're playing North Carolina Cherokee Stickball or if you're playing the Oklahoma version.
Gotcha. Okay.
But past that, you get the idea. I mean, don't forget this is a violent sport. There's a lot of there's tackling rules nowadays, which can vary. But in the old days, it was smacking people across the head with sticks. It was all sorts of stuff. But if you want to kind of if you want to, I forget the word, but like make it to where a player is not able to play for the next 10 seconds, like they look like they're a risk if they remain in play, then there are tackling rules that you're allowed to implement.
Interesting.
Yeah, you can dispose a player, I guess, for a little while, I guess.
Break his leg.
Break his leg. But I did find some interesting rule variants that I thought could be fun to kind of mention.
Yeah.
I found that this was interesting. There is a men versus women sort of thing where you impose a handicap on the men to where they are only allowed to play the ball with sticks, where the women are allowed to use their hands.
Oh, okay.
So that hopefully kind of evens it out. Though some of these videos I'm watching, some of these ladies are
pretty good.
They could wrestle me down any day. There's some strong looking ladies. I don't know that they need the handicap, but that's always there, I guess. And then I found this cool stickball variant where instead of 2 goals on either side, there's just like this one tall branchless tree, like a tall pole in the center of the field with like this large. It's like a large sign, or I've also seen like a large ball structure that you're meant to shoot the ball at, and if you hit it, then you get points.
That's cool.
Yeah. So there's lots of stuff like that where the main idea is that there's a stick and a ball, but past that, kind of there are some other variants on gameplay. But that's mainly it. All in all, it's a violent sport that was once meant to replace warfare. Keep that in mind.
Yeah.
But has now turned into more of a social event and or a spiritual ceremony to honor the spirit of fallen ancestors.
That is really cool. It's a lot more,
that's
more detailed than I expected, honestly. It's really cool.
I can't help that the material might be slightly more interesting, Zach. It's luck of the draw, baby. Luck of the draw.
Hey man, it's just a whole lot easier to watch glass blowing than it is to
talk about it.
Yes.
It's just one of those things.
Yeah.
I feel like we've had one of those before though, too.
Yeah, it was blacksmithing, I'm certain.
Blacksmithing, probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you're welcome. That.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Hey, that's the name of the show.
I forgot to say that. Oops.
It's fine, I guess.
It's whatever.
But hey, we've always got next show. Okay?
That's true.
There's always next time. Do you know what you're talking about next show there?
Oh, let me look it up. Hold up. You getting that good Foley? Oh, good. I'm doing a tarot reading. Or tarot card.
Did you say carrot reading?
No, it's a tarot, but tarot card reading, which is a like
tarot reading.
Yeah, a form of like fortune telling.
Yeah, predicting the future.
Yeah. Should be interesting.
Well, I'm going to be doing escapology, which sounds exactly like what it is, a study of escaping. I'm just not sure whether I want to do like escape rooms or if I want to do like Houdini, like escaping a like a pair of handcuffs or something,
or a coffin. Yeah.
There's so many other things.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like escape rooms are kind of like overdone now.
Maybe.
I don't know.
Could be interesting just to kind of talk about
both.
A pair of handcuffs. But what's both?
Yeah. No. You could tell us everything about it.
Okay, well, I might do that. I might tell you everything about everything.
Thank you. That's what we want.
You're welcome.
That's what the listeners want. That's what I want personally. I just want you to talk about everything. I think the only listener who wouldn't want that is Tyler, but you know.
Well, I want to give a one last you're welcome. But first, Mr. Zach, would you mind telling our listeners how they can get in contact with us?
Oh, yeah, I can do that. Well, my dear fellows, you can reach us at our Twitter, which is at YourWelcomePO1. That is the hottest Twitter handle you will ever put in your search bar. You can tweet at us.
Yeah.
You can DM us. You can mention us in a tweet. You can do a quote retweet. I have no idea how that works. That update is just ridiculous.
You're so old, Zach.
I'm so old. I barely use the Twitter. What's a quote retweet? But you can do that. You can ask us questions about the topics we're going to talk about. You could suggest future topics for us to research for you and talk about, give our opinions on. But another direct way you can do that is by our email, which is yourwelcomequestions@gmail.com. That is YOURE, again, without the apostrophe, welcomequestions@gmail.com. Also, you can check out the Facebook group, which Drew handles, and there's tons of fun people in there, fans of the show. They talk about their lives and the podcast, and I don't know because I don't really look at it, but Drew does. He could tell you a whole lot more about it in the Facebook group.
The face group, baby.
The face group. It's You're Welcome, the Facebook group. I don't know the full title.
You essentially got it. Just look up You're Welcome.
Yeah, just look it up. It's fine.
You'll get it.
Yeah. Also, hey, if you like to make music, and you like to not make any money off of it, you can send us like a 10 or 15 second original music clip. We'd love to showcase some of your talents to the listeners who hop on. We can plug your SoundCloud, plug your Twitter or whatever. Just send it to yourwelcomequestions@gmail.com. We'll use it as an intro for one of the next episodes if you want. If not, it's cool. But we kind of like listening to music, so please do. Also, one last thing. If you enjoy the show, please take the time to recommend it to one of your friends this week. It helps us grow. We don't do any marketing at all, so we just do word of mouth at the moment. If you could just do what you can to help us, we'd be very grateful. I don't think Spotify has a rating system, and I don't think we're on iTunes, so there's no way to rate us there.
I can't freaking figure out iTunes.
No?
So
maybe one day we'll figure it out.
iTunes is trash anyway.
Yeah, it's dead. It's a dead thing.
It is definitely dying. Yeah.
So yeah, get the word out.
Anyway. Yeah, well, thank you, Zach, for doing that.
Yeah,
and
you're
thank
welcome.
You're welcome. But thank you, all you listeners, for joining us. All you hot glass ball stick sport ball playing people. I'm Drew.
I'm Zach.
And we'll see you next time on
You're welcome.